Hello, how is everyone? Welcome to the Jesus Facts channel. In today's video, we will address a topic that may raise some questions and even discomfort for many. We will talk about a much debated subject, especially in recent decades. Did Jesus have a wife? This is a question that, for many, might seem unthinkable. But believe it, throughout history, evidence, and even documents have emerged that can provide a new perspective on this topic. And that's what we're going to talk about here. Imagine for a moment, we are talking about the most influential man in history, the Son of God, who changed the course of humanity. And around him, many followers accompany him, but one name stands out. A name that raises so many questions and could have more than just a spiritual connection with Jesus. This name is Mary Magdalene. In the canonical Gospels, the Bible does not clearly state that Jesus was married, but it also does not completely refute this idea. The figure of Mary Magdalene, for example, has been the subject of intense debates over the centuries. She was often called a sinner, a prostitute, but also considered one of the most devoted followers of Christ, being one of the few to witness his crucifixion and resurrection. It is important to note that, over the centuries, the figure of Mary Magdalene has been stigmatized, mainly from the declaration of Pope Gregory in the 6th century, who associated Mary with a sinful woman. However, over the years, the Catholic Church has revisited its position, especially since 1969, when the official stance was modified, recognizing Mary Magdalene as a saint. But what if this idea of Mary Magdalene as Jesus' wife were more than just a supposition? Contemporary scholars have delved into this subject, and even found some traces that suggest the relationship between Jesus and Mary Magdalene was of a much more intimate nature than most people imagine. Did you know that in the 2000s, a theory began to gain traction, especially after the success of the book The Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown? In this book, it is suggested that Mary Magdalene was not just a follower of Jesus, but his wife. Although Dan Brown's novel is a work of fiction, it was inspired by theories that began to be debated by some scholars and researchers, particularly regarding ancient texts that suggest a story very different from the traditional one. One of the main documents that further raised this theory was found in the British National Library in 2014. This manuscript, dating back more than 1,500 years, was called the Lost Gospel, and in it, Jesus and Mary Magdalene are portrayed as a couple with 2 children. This revelation caused a great stir, especially because the text was translated from a Greek manuscript that had been lost in history until it was rediscovered. But let's go back a bit further in time. Did you know that the Jewish tradition at the time of Jesus required that rabbis be married? And considering that Jesus was seen as a rabbi, it is interesting to reflect on this question. Was Jesus really celibate? Would he have broken such an important norm of Jewish tradition? Over time, the idea of Jesus' marriage to Mary Magdalene has been strongly debated. Some scholars, such as Michael Bagent and Richard Lee, authors of books on the subject, argue that the theory that Jesus could have been married to Mary Magdalene is not so absurd. They point to historical evidence that could support this theory, such as the fact that in some apocryphal Gospels, Jesus appears with an intimacy with Mary Magdalene that could indicate a deeper relationship. Now, let's think for a moment. In the Gospel of John, for example, Mary Magdalene is the first person to see Jesus after his resurrection. Not only that, but she is also entrusted with a very important mission: to bring the message of the resurrection to the disciples. This, in itself, already demonstrates the special position that Mary Magdalene held in Jesus' life. But what do we know about their relationship? Were they just teacher and disciple? Or was there something more between them? Another interesting point that could suggest a closer relationship between Jesus and Mary Magdalene is an event narrated in the Gospels. The wedding at Cana in Galilee, where Jesus performs his first miracle, turning water into wine. The Bible does not mention who was getting married, but many scholars, including the theologian Saint Jerome, believe that the wedding could have been between Mary Magdalene and John, the evangelist. However, other scholars, such as the historian Michael Hack, suggest that the wedding could actually have been between Jesus and Mary Magdalene. What do you think about this? Wouldn't it be strange, at the time, For a man who was preaching love and care for others, like Jesus, to have a relationship with someone he truly loved and with whom he could have formed a family. It is important to emphasize that the Bible, in fact, does not directly mention a marriage between Jesus and Mary Magdalene, but the absence of a clear mention does not mean a denial. The idea that Jesus could have been married is just one of the many possibilities that arise as scholars try to interpret the ancient texts more broadly. And in a world where traditions often limit the understanding of what is possible or not, it is essential to keep an open mind for new discoveries and questions. And what if what we know about Jesus and his life is just a part of something much bigger? Before we continue with the second part of this video, which will bring even more revelations about this mystery, don't forget to subscribe to the Jesus Facts channel and leave your like. In the next segment, we will explore more deeply the historical evidence and theories that can bring new perspectives on the life and relationship of Jesus. Stay tuned. Now that we have explored the first clues and possibilities that suggest a possible relationship between Jesus and Mary Magdalene, let's delve even deeper into the historical evidence and texts that can shed new light on this topic. As we mentioned, there is a series of sources that have been left out by the official Christian tradition, including the apocryphal Gospels. These texts were not included in the biblical canon, but they can offer interesting insights into the life of Jesus and his disciples. One of these texts, the Gospel of Philip, written in the 3rd century, contains a controversial passage that describes a scene in which Jesus kisses Mary Magdalene on the mouth. This type of reference, of course, does not appear in the canonical Gospels, but if considered, it could suggest a degree of intimacy far beyond the teacher-disciple relationship. It is interesting to note that, at the time, kisses were a common gesture between couples and close friends, but the fact that such a gesture is specifically mentioned in an apocryphal gospel raises a series of questions. In a culture where relationships were much more formal and codified, this type of detail can be significant. But why did the church choose to reject these gospels? The answer may lie in the implications they bring. If Jesus were married and had children, this could interfere with the traditional understanding of his life and mission. The idea of a celibate Christ entirely devoted to his divine mission is central to Christian theology. If he had a wife and children, this could diminish his image of being exclusively divine, turning him into a more human figure. And this certainly was something the church did not want to allow, as it could weaken the authority and mystery surrounding the person of Jesus. Another important point to highlight are the archaeological discoveries that also suggest the possibility of a relationship between Jesus and Mary Magdalene. In 2012, for example, a papyrus was found and generated great controversy. In it, there is a mention of Jesus' wife, although the name of this wife is not specified. The Vatican, for its part, rejected the authenticity of the papyrus, claiming it was a forgery. However, scientists from Columbia University and MIT argue that there is no evidence that the papyrus is forged, leaving open the possibility that Jesus was indeed married. This discovery, along with other evidence, opens a range of possibilities for the history of Jesus. What many scholars, especially those who defend the idea that Jesus and Mary Magdalene were married, point out is that the figure of Jesus could be much more complex and human than the traditional narrative allows. But what does this mean for our faith and understanding of Jesus? This is the big question. The possibility that Jesus was married to Mary Magdalene does not diminish in any way his divinity or the importance of his mission of love and redemption. If in fact he had a relationship with someone, this could even emphasize the message that human love is something sacred, something worthy of celebration. After all, Jesus preached about love, compassion, and the importance of relationships. So why couldn't he have lived this in his own personal life as well? Moreover, if Mary Magdalene was indeed his wife, this could also explain why she played such a central role in the resurrection narrative. In a cultural context where the testimony of women was not valued, the fact that Mary Magdalene was the first to see Jesus resurrected and to bring the message to the disciples is, in itself, an affirmation of her special role and importance in Christian history. If she had been his wife, This would make her presence at that moment even more significant and powerful. However, the truth about the relationship between Jesus and Mary Magdalene remains a mystery. We cannot affirm with absolute certainty whether they were married or not, but it is undeniable that there are historical indications and documents that make us question the traditional view we have of Jesus' life. The most important thing is to keep an open mind to the possibilities and continue seeking the truth honestly and respectfully. At the end of this video, what can we conclude? Perhaps we will never know for sure if Jesus had a wife, but it is possible that the historical truth about his life and relationships is much richer and more complex than the traditional Christian narrative presents to us. What we do know is that he preached about love, justice, compassion, and forgiveness, and these qualities should continue to be the basis of our lives. Now, what do you think? Could Jesus have had a wife? And if so, what would that change in your understanding of the life and teachings of Christ? Leave your comments below and share your reflections. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel Jesus Facts for more videos that explore the history, mysteries, and questions about the life of Jesus. See you next time.